Hello, crafty friends! I'm super excited to share this brand new Challenge a Crafty Friend card with you. It's been such a long time since I've been able to do a challenge card with my friend Lean, and I'm just super excited to finally have another challenge card to share with you. For this one, the theme was to use the Hello Bluebird Feed the Birds, and full disclosure, this is a very old challenge. We made this challenge or came up with it back when this was a brand new stamp set. But then last year it didn't really go according to plan for me. So I had to keep postponing the challenge. And I'm super happy that I was finally able to do it, and Lean was so patient with me. So thanks for that. So I stamped all of the images from Feed the Birds from Hello Bluebird onto Transotype Perfect coloring paper. And for my skin combination, I'm using E04, E11, E01, and E00. Again, going in with the E04, then E11, E01, and then the E000, I'm sorry. Adding a little bit of the R21 for blush. For the hair, I'm using E70 shades, and I just used the same color combination for both girls. Just using the E73, E71, and E70. Then for the other girl, I'm also bringing in E77, just for a bit more definition because there's more visible from her hair. Then blending that out with E74, E71, and E70. Oh, I'm sorry, I just apparently skipped the E71. Not sure why. Oh, there we go. I'm using the same muted brown shades, the E70s for the birdhouse, so that it's all like muted shades. The pinks, the purples, the teal is also like in very muted tones. So just use the E74, now E71 and E70. I skipped the actual birdhouse part. I just colored the stand because I wanted the birdhouse to be like the muted pink shade. Just adding a second layer for some more definition. And I also use the E74 and E71 to color in the like inside part, the opening of the birdhouse. And for the main part of the birdhouse, I'm using RV 90, 95, 93, and 91. And I'm also using the same color combination for a lot of the clothes and accessories on the girls. I colored the left girl in those shades off camera, and I'm just showing the color combination on the coat of the little cutie. So again, RV 95, then 93, and 91. Going in with quite a bit more of the RV 95, just in the darkest areas to add a bit more definition, leaving the lightest areas still white so that those wouldn't get too dark. And then I'm coloring the rest in with the RV 91. Bringing in a bit more of the RV 93 so that the transition is nicer. And I'm also coloring her little boots in the same color combo. Then for my bluish shade, I'm using BB25, BB23, and BB21, which is like a muted violet shade, like a cool toned. Oh, it's BB20, I'm sorry. Using the same shade on the rim of her hat and also on her scarf, on the mittens as well. And then blending everything together with the BB20. Going back in with the darkest shade just to add a bit more definition. Then I'm also bringing in my muted teal, so I'm using BG70s, BG75 as my darkest shade because I didn't want the image to be too dark. BG72 and BG70. Just blending out the BG72 with the BG70. Again, going in with BG72. The difference between BG72 and 70 was a bit too much, so I'm just using the tip-to-tip technique to blend out the edges so that I would have a transition shade, because there actually is no BG71. And I'm just coloring in the little details on her coat, and I'm also using the same color combination for her boots. Since the area is so small, I didn't have to use the tip-to-tip technique in this case, but for larger areas I really like to get a smoother transition. Coloring in the little buttons on her shoes as well. For the tights on both girls, I'm using, or also the little cuffs on the girl on the right, and the hat details, I'm using cool grays, just a little C1 and C00. Then I'm adding some gel pen details to the accessories on the girls, just some dots on the scarf, and I also added some dots of the BB25 to the girl on the right. Then I'm going to color the squirrels. I wanted to keep the colors fairly muted, so not a lot of warm toned brown shades. So I decided to, instead of like a reddish color that I usually use for squirrels, I went with E40 markers. So E47, E44. Just blending that out a little bit. Then bringing in E43. Then E42. And then I'm using E41 and E40 on the lightest parts of the face of the squirrel, and a little bit of R21 for blush. I'm using the same colors for the birds. Again, going in with E47, then E44, and overall I did keep those a bit darker than the squirrels. E43, and E40. Then I'm adding some more gel pen details to the rest of the images. Again, using the Arteza white gel pen in, I think it's 0.6. And also adding some more to the little girls. Adding some stripes to her head or the headband as well. And I really think that those highlights just add a lot of interest to an image. Makes them look a little bit more cartoony. I die cut the Slimline Winter Walk scene, I believe it's called, from Hello Bluebird. And also a piece of cardstock that is just Slimline size. It does have the stitching details, but you won't be able to see it afterwards. So I just ink blended that with Salvaged Patina and used some Sukaneko Sheer Shimmer Spritz. That's hard to pronounce. Just for some shine on the background. And I also added it to the snowy hills. And I added a tiny bit of Salvaged Patina to the tops of those as well. For the mountain range, I wanted it to be like a purplish gray. So I'm going in with Milk Lavender. And then I'm bringing in the Hickory Smoke. And I actually die cut the scene and then I had the die on my desk so I could figure out which piece went where, because this is actually one of the more complicated scenes, which has a lot of pieces. But if you have the die for reference, it's really super easy to piece together. Just blending the two colors back and forth. And the mat I'm using is actually a baking mat, like a reusable baking paper replacement. And since it's made of silicone, it's actually non-slip, and even the tiny pieces don't move around on it. It's similar to the waffle flower water media mat. This one is much, much thinner, but it was also only €10 for a 3-pack, so this one works for me. I do have the small waffle flower water media mat, but for anything that's like slimline sized, I do need a larger size, and those like baking sheets were just a much more affordable option. I added the ink blended background to a slimline card base, added the frame, the snowy hills, and then I started piecing the mountain range and the trees in the background. I started from the right. I actually tried it with the mountain range in the middle, but the pieces didn't quite fit, so always make sure to start from one side so you end up with the pieces perfectly fitting like a puzzle. Then I just added the little mountain tops, and I just love those scene dies by Hello Bluebird. They just come together so quick and you have a gorgeous background. For the sentiment, I'm just using the sentiment from the stamp set and I'm heat embossing that in white onto a strip of black cardstock. The embossing powder I'm using is the Wow Opaque Bright White in the super fine version, which I just love for delicate sentiments because it gives such great detail. I used a brush to take away any like stray embossing powder bits, and then I'm just using my heat gun to melt the embossing powder. I decided to add the sentiment strip first so that it would allow me to like figure out the rest of the placement. Then I'm just adding all the images to the background with liquid glue. The little birds all around. I just skipped a few of the images so that I could adhere those down with some dimension. I decided to add a few more of the like little bird seeds just all around the card. And I just stamped those with a stamping block. Then going in with the like little 2 dots. And then I'm bringing in my E70 marker, or E71, E71, and then I just colored all the little bird seeds so that they would match the ones that are in the around the little seed bag. Then I added foam squares to the two little girls, and I actually ended up adhering the sentiments that were a little too low, but I could make it work just to by moving the little girl over to the right a bit more than I initially wanted. Then added the second girl as well, one bird flying, another one that just picking at the seeds. And then finally, I added some embellishment with the Stardust stickles just to the mountaintops and the top of the birdhouse. I erased a little pencil line I forgot at the bottom of the birdhouse and also added some Stardust stickles there. I added some to the pom-poms on the girl's head and between the branches so that they look icy. And there we go. That finishes off my card for today. I love those little girls from Hello Bluebird. They're just so adorable. And I had so much fun making this card. I will link to Lean's video down below because she created a card using the Feed the Birds as well. And thank you so very much for watching and spending some time with me today. I hope I'll see you again next time. Until then, have an amazing day. Bye!